getting the, there we go. So we're going to make a start. There are a few people still joining us, but hello to everyone who's joining us from Northern Ireland and I think farther afield for today's webinar. My name is Sharon Adams, and on behalf of CraftNI, I'm really delighted to welcome Rachael Colley virtually to join us in Belfast for today's artist talk. This talk sits alongside our current exhibition, Pinned, which is in the CraftNI Gallery in Royal Avenue in Belfast. Pinned has been organised by the Association for Contemporary Jewellers and Silversmiths in Northern Ireland, and has the work of 23 makers who've all produced one-off pieces for that exhibition. That work has all been professionally documented, both with photographs of the individual pieces and a film of the installed exhibition, where the work is all displayed on individual garments. The exhibition runs to the 2nd of January, and if you can't get to visit CraftNI in Belfast, you can see it online at craftni.org. I'd just like to acknowledge the Arts Council of Northern Ireland on behalf of both CraftNI and ACJSNI in supporting both the documentation of the exhibition and this talk today. Rachael is going to talk for about 40 minutes. We are recording the session and we'll take questions at the end, so please pop those into the chat as we go along. Northern Ireland has a strong presence of independent jewellery makers, and in presenting this talk alongside Pinned, we hope to stimulate conversation about contemporary jewellery. In his text that accompanies the Pinned exhibition, Joseph McBrien from Ulster University considers that contemporary jewellery as a space where conventions are challenged and contested. And that's something that we see strongly in the work of interdisciplinary artist Rachael Colley. That's a tricky word, Rachael. Rachael's practice combines jewellery, objects and sculpture. Her design process draws on wide-ranging research and explores unconventional materials and contemporary processes. Rachael is a senior lecturer in jewellery and metalwork at Sheffield Hallam University. She gained her BA in 3D design, specialising in jewellery and silversmithing at Loughborough University in 2007, and her MA in goldsmithing, silversmithing, metalwork and jewellery in 2010 from the Royal College of Art. Her work is exhibited internationally, and a piece from her award-winning Shagreen series is held in the permanent collection of the Museum of Arts and Crafts at Itami in Japan. So Rachael, I think that's you thoroughly introduced, and I'm now going to hand over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Sharon, for that lovely introduction, and to CraftNI and ACJ Northern Ireland for inviting me to do this talk. I'm very proud to be in partnership with your Pinned exhibition, and thank you again for the opportunity. So I wanted to kick off by introducing myself via collage. This is my own personal self-portrait. It was inspired by a quote that I saw from the sculptor Conrad Shawcross, who described the body as a torus, just a massive hole from mouth to arse. And I thought that was brilliant because the body, and specifically my own lived experience of living in my body, is one of the main driving forces behind the work that I do, and the reason I'm really interested in jewellery and in the body as a site for artworks, as it were. Yeah, so this just a little introduction. Sorry, also another image to gross you out with. Series of images of my own mouth area. I really am inspired by my own bodily experience because I suppose in a way it's not normal in a sense. I have a couple of autoimmune diseases, one of which is called systemic sclerosis, and that causes the hardening of the skin and the muscles on the internal surfaces of my body. It's causing parts of my body to shut down gradually over time, and I don't have any function anymore in my esophagus, so I find eating is a particularly challenging thing. So that's why I look at that part quite a lot, and I do some drawings and collages that try to explore my awkward eating sensations. Yeah, so I try to think about how I feel when I'm trying to eat things. I have a lot of difficulty eating, and especially eating in public. I really hate that. But it also causes me to have a bit of an obsession with food, I think, really, putting it like that. I do collect materials and often find it very difficult to not pick stuff up, even when it's food waste that I find on my train journeys to and from work. So I usually photograph them and then pick up the peel that I find. Also, when I'm eating food, I generally have difficulty throwing things away. My wonderful students also tend to give me gifts of banana peel and things like that, which I'm very grateful for. And I suppose it's a fairly odd way of being, but it's a way for me to engage with foods that I can't really eat anymore, or if I do eat them, I'm being very naughty and I feel very bad afterwards. As a result of this, I am so fascinated by the very earliest forms of jewellery that archaeologists have found, such as these shell beads from the Blombos cave in South Africa, because they are thought to be made from food waste. And I was interested in, there's a great book called Making by the anthropologist Tim Ingold, and he talks about the making process and says that materials think in us as we think through them. And I suppose I'm taking it rather literally in the way that I work with food waste. But it for me also harks back to the very earliest origins and forms of jewellery. When I was a student, starting on my BA under the tutelage of Roberta Bernabe, she encouraged me to look at contemporary jewellery or art jewellery, and I just became so fascinated by working conceptually and working towards trying to ask questions with my work. I really love this piece by Peter Skubik. It's a piece called Jewellery Under the Skin, and he had a piece implanted into his body for a period of time, and it was then removed and placed into a ring. And I was just so fascinated by this relationship of jewellery being, could traverse the body boundary in a sense, and being inside and outside. I love that piece. And also these pieces by Christoph Zellweger, which is called Hip Piece, which is basically a hip replacement. And I really like the placement that it's worn outside of the body in the same location that, or referencing the same location that it would be internally. And yeah, that idea of the internal and the external always really fascinated me. So when I was studying on my MA, I developed these pieces, which were created using my own blood and the blood of my partner. And I was really interested at the time looking at materials and exploring materials, particularly dupes of materials. There's a famous mineral called Whitby Jet here in the UK that I'm sure many of you will have heard of. It's a beautiful stone, and it's basically sort of fossilized wood, and it became very popular in the Victorian era as mourning jewellery, and so popular that they also developed a lot of imitators of this material, one of which was called bois d'Urchy, which is French for hardened wood, and it was a mixture of sawdust and blood, but blood from animals that would have been flushed down the sewers. And that was developed into a really interesting material. So through this process, I was trying to recreate it, but referencing that relationship, that intimate relationship that you have with your partner, and what it might feel like to wear a material up from their visceral bodily fluids next to the skin, and how, again, that sort of traversing body boundary relationship might work. Also then as well, I suppose, if people got divorced, if these were used as kind of wedding rings, how that might work within society. I think it's really interesting how these materials can build up these relationships with people. I also made some work from food. I became quite interested in examples of when we might get together with family and friends, to how food brings us together, and how food, like our bodies, we all have an experience of our lived body, and we all generally tend to have experiences around food, so it's another commonality. These ones I was quite interested in, sort of rituals around eating, and I was also interested in alchemical processes and the magic of making materials, and I thought this was quite appropriate with I was really fascinated with Catholic religion, and how the body and blood of Christ in the ceremony actually become those things, or thought to become those things in Catholic religion, and how the magic of making, I suppose, can transcend different boundaries as well. I went on from thinking about tea and biscuits to Sunday roast with the family, and started to make pieces using beef. And you can see the ring up in the top right as well. That was designed as some sort of stock cube. So it's beef that's been engraved, and it's got flour inlaid into the engraving with an egg white wash over the top. You can take it out and use it for cooking. I was also quite interested in developing this as a material dupe for wood, and looking at ecclesiastical different motifs, and again looking at the rose, and this time it's a Tudor rose, or chewed a rose. I enjoy a bit of a pun in my titles, and I quite like the fact that this could be nestled in a church somewhere and nobody would really realise what it is. I was also quite interested in the idea that these could be very, very expensive and fancy dog biscuits. We were at the time situated very close to Hyde Park, and I go for walks in there and see all the fancy dogs and think, wow, you know, they could certainly afford to buy one of these as a dog biscuit. That would be cool. I also do love British history, and it was quite heavily influenced, this collection, by my interest in Henry VIII and his tyrannical behaviour, the way he treated his wives and women in his life, and obviously beheaded 2 of them. So I thought it's quite interesting that the material relates to that, but hopefully you do look at it and think twice about whether it could be wood or whether it could be meat and flesh. I got him, photoshopped him very badly wearing it. Terrible. Sorry about that. I then got into teaching. So those were from 2010, and then we're jumping forward now to sort of 2016, 2017, when I started to get back into doing a bit of making. And this beefy neck piece was kind of designed to fit the animal back together again a little bit. So it's cowhide leather with beef placed back onto it through the processes that I'm using. And what I also wanted to do was to try and incorporate eating alongside the work with food, so that it was clearer that there was a connection between those things. And I started to develop eating implements as well that would question different uses and different relationships with the body. I like the fact that the cutlery comb kind of has an element of disgust in it, as does the jewellery made from food, I hope anyway, that they do question how you interact then, and really think about what it is that you're doing with your body, and how you're treating it, how you're caring for it. This is the beautiful Irvin. He's very handsome, and he's wearing these pieces that are made from bacon and balsa wood with butcher's twine, connecting them together, which again was something that I was hoping connected you with the piece. The meat pieces do have have a whiff about them. They do smell slightly, but that does seem to go a bit more over time. So I wanted also a visual connection with that as well. And it was important that they were shown directly onto the skin for me as well, to show that body boundary connection. I developed some pieces as well that could be used in cooking. So these are stock cubes for ramen type dishes. I was quite interested in Eastern cooking styles, and yeah, these ones also reference the technique of makume gane, which is a metalworking technique where there are lots and lots of very fine layers of metal, and it creates this beautiful wood grain kind of effect. So that was what I was trying to recreate in these implements as well. And a bit here about just about my design process, that I do collage, a bit of drawing. I do really like using CAD as well. I developed a series of double lobed spoons that were inspired by, you could see at the top corner there, a historical artifact, which is the coronation spoon used in the coronation to anoint the monarch. And it's just such a beautiful piece. I really love it. And I really liked that idea of segmenting different flavors within an eating implement. So that was what I was looking to do. And I really like creating these elements and then sort of collaging them as I'm working, looking at different forms and how they might work together in different ways. So that's one of the finished press form pieces. And then I started developing similar idea in CAD, again, referencing body parts. So you can see the CAD prints on the left are all the same form, but with different handles on. And it's really great to be able to play with CAD in that way and create 3D printed artifacts that you can really use to sort of test out ideas very quickly. I find it's a really useful tool. So the double lobed spoons were featured in a journal called Feast, which I was really excited about. And then the editor and curator from that journal, Laura Mansfield, contacted me about applying for Arts Council funding. And I joined forces with the artist Nuala Clooney, and we all applied for Arts Council funding to put on a national touring exhibition. And myself and Nuala also got some funding to create a new body of work as part of this. And I really enjoyed it. I really loved doing that. And I just ended up playing around with things. I was cutting off bits of metalwork, bits of old cutlery, and finding old tweezers from the workshop and welding them together. I cut off my hair and made a toothbrush from the old laser cutting offcuts that were in the scrap bin. Yeah, so I really had a lot of fun trying to develop this collection, but it was all about trying to communicate some form of my own discomfort with my own bodily experience. Yeah, so that's what I ended up developing. So they were mainly one-off pieces, but I also created some batch production type pieces. One of which was this series of spat spoons, which is a cross between a spatula and a spoon. The walnut section always stays the same, but the internal section are a series of spun copper pieces that are different depths, and they are interchangeable, so you can use them for cooking and measuring out different quantities for different dishes. You can also turn it over, as you can see here, and use it as a mirror, some form of mirror that's rather odd. But I was very taken with Etruscan and Roman bronze mirrors at the time, and that's what this piece is kind of referencing, that reflection of your internal relationship with food as well. I'm really keen to not just exhibit my work and sort of send it off to exhibitions where it's kept in a cabinet, but also to take part in events where people can actually interact with and directly use the works. So I've had the chance over a few years to try and do this in some ways, which is really good. and I'm very grateful for those opportunities. Yeah, so some examples from that. And really great opportunity I had in 2019 was to go and observe how people were interacting with my cutlery crane collection during Steinbeiss's experimental gastronomy events. And these were just a really fabulous series of events. I know that several other makers have had the opportunity to take part in this, and it was really fascinating for me to see how people reacted to them. My works, Martin decided, would be placed on the tables, as you can see on the image there, and were just open for anybody to use at any time. So they weren't served as part of any particular course as such, just as and when people felt confident enough to use them. And it was really interesting to see whether some people didn't use them at all, and some people used them an awful lot. So that was really an interesting thing for me to see. Alongside those works, I was also carrying on to developing my jewellery collections. This series is called Tongs, and it was created using mango stones or pits. And I went on a leather working course, and I was really interested in using veg tan leather and moulding it, but I really wanted to use waste. And I've become a vegetarian since since doing the meaty work. And through these pieces, I wanted to try and convey that idea of externally wearing a kind of something that resembles an internal organ, or an organ like the tongue, which traverses that sort of internal external body boundary in a way. But I ended up using leather, and I used leather that was going to be discarded. So there were areas on the hides that had been damaged whilst the animal was alive, so either by things like barbed wire or also by insect bites and things like that. But I found that those blemishes really helped to highlight that sort of disgust in that connection with the body. I've had people who've worn them for me very kindly outside, and several of them have reported people doing a double take, especially with the brooches, I think, because they can look like the top of a boob or like a chicken fillet that's sort of somehow on the outside, and that it just looks like you're exposing yourself, or that there's something very fleshy that's been misplaced. Yeah, I think that they do kind of get people's attention sometimes. I'm also really interested in photographing my work, and whilst people are eating, to show that, to basically show the context, to show the connection that this is what it's been made from, essentially, but also the inspiration behind it, which is my eating problems in relation to systemic sclerosis, and the fact that I really want to eat something like mango, and I really can't, or really shouldn't. So there's almost a real voyeuristic relationship there, that I see the models that I use really enjoying eating the fruit, and I can't eat it. So I continued using food waste, and these pieces are again using different peels, different food waste. The one on the left is apple peel, and the other one is the first in the series of shagreen pieces that I created using citrus fruit peel. Both of which I wanted again to focus on being material dupes for traditionally animal-based materials. I was aiming for the apple peel to look like a tortoiseshell-like material, and for the citrus fruit peel to look like shagreen, which is like a leather that is that is made from ray or shark skin traditionally. I did a bit more further development with this because I was having problems with attaching the orange peel and different elements to the work. So I made some with these bamboo rivets, and also one of the only fruits I can eat. I can eat a couple, bananas and melon, and mainly I like bananas. Banana for breakfast, that's good. And you can see here that I've used banana peel and tried to create a kind of like ebony sort of esque veneer on the balsa wood panels, which again my students helped me with by kindly gifting me the banana peels. I was really pleased in 2019 to get the opportunity to show my work in our university gallery, and it also gave me the chance to open up my work to the public. I was able to put on a series of lunchtime events where people could come and get some lunch for free, and they came and chose a piece of work from the exhibition, a piece of jewellery to wear, and a piece of like an implement to eat their lunch with. And it was really an interesting experience for me, and I'm really grateful to everybody who was able to come and take part. I was really hoping to for there to be a relationship between wearing jewellery made from food waste and then eating alongside it. But I think people ended up being so focused on trying to eat with these implements. I think the overriding thing of feeling hungry and wanting to eat your lunch and knowing you've got to get back for work or class was kind of there quite strongly. And but what I think you can see through these images is some of the awkwardness that I feel when I'm trying to eat things, and that comes across in having to hopefully they chose to achieve people choosing to interact with my work and to use it to try and eat with. One of the problems I have is that I eat really quite slowly, and that's what people found was that these implements did slow them down. And you can see there, just some of the awkwardness of leaning over or leaning back that I feel I do quite a lot. I got the opportunity, along with some of my students in 2019, to test out the laser sintering facility that we have at Sheffield Hallam University. And it was such an exciting experience. I got to create this new collection of work, which I sent into the Itami International Craft Exhibition in 2019, for which it was selected and also won the grand prize. So I was pretty amazed by that and very grateful. And the piece that's in the collection is the piece that you see there on the poster. I've also shown here some close-up images of the materials, because it's not sometimes all that obvious in some of the images. The surface of the citrus fruit peel and the shagreen effect, and also the witness marks from the build support that I have from the aluminium frames and structures, which also really complements the dappled effect of the pores of the citrus fruit. During lockdown, I didn't have the opportunity to use the photography studio facilities, so I collaborated with Sheffield photographer Joe Horner to try to address some of the things that I want to convey with the work, the close relationship with the body, and how the body really serves to activate these pieces through its warmth and through its moisture. It really helps to give off the scent of the citrus fruit peel. And also I really love the beautiful still life images that he's done with the pieces that really connect to the origins of the material. this one for me as well was really interesting, because I often feel I don't have, as many of us, we don't really have much of a sense of what's going on inside our bodies. But I do find I have quite a lot of sensation in my mouth and at the back of my throat that I often feel very uncomfortable. And the placement of this brooch, which the form has been taken from looking at that area of the body and then placing it back into that context to try and show that relationship. And I think with the brooch pin there, you do get this sense of pain and discomfort in the context of the work, or at least I hope you do, and that's what we were aiming for. I have, throughout lockdown, I've been working on a commission for Craftspace in Birmingham, who are putting on an exhibition that will tour from 2021 called We Are Commoners. And it's a really, really interesting opportunity for me to continue and to push my development of my materials. I feel like for me, my material development, the kind of initial stages of my design process in gathering and collecting materials and then processing them and creating a material sample is the most exciting bit probably for me. Yeah, so I was really happy to have this opportunity to do this project. And you can see here lots and lots of different things that I was collecting and trying to work with from my daily walks. So I was combining food waste with natural materials, natural waste. So sawdust that I was machining from wood that I'd collected from hedgerows, avocado pits and skins. Avocados are one of the things I can eat, and it's quite slippy, so it goes down fairly well. So that's all good. Eggs are a good protein, so you can see a lot of pieces there with eggshell. There was some waste milk products, melon seeds, pine needles, potato peel, carrot peel, and also Chinese lanterns. I think that was one of them, to create kind of mesh. So this is what I'm continuing to work on at the moment. I'm carrying on making different samples, and I'm hoping to by 2021 have come up with some new work that will be part of this this fantastic touring exhibition from Craftspace. I'm also really really pleased to have received this this opportunity to become one of the platform artists in residence for 2021. So I'm a cohort of 5 others who will be working with Site Gallery in Sheffield and other Sheffield organisations, and I'll be, over the course of 2 years, developing a new body of work that I hope will push my practice further. I want to explore more sculptural outcomes and play with scale. And I'm really going to be focusing on looking at the Sheffield metalworking industry. I had a fantastic Zoom meeting this morning with Joan, who is the curator of the Cutler's Company in Sheffield. And I'm already learning so much. She's put me straight on so many things about cutlery, and I'm really, really looking forward to delving into this more and to learning more about metalworking in Sheffield. Particularly, I'm interested in the role of women and how that's played out over time. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I'm trying to make my video reappear.
Okay.
The joys of... There we go. Rachel, that was just fascinating. And
thank you. I hope I always feel myself talking too quickly, so I'm sorry. I think I've gone a little bit too fast, maybe, but yeah.
I think you were very clear and very enjoyable. And I see that the question, the little chat box is going quite bonkers at the bottom. Anne Boylan, let's start with a question from Anne, shall we? Where Anne asks if you can answer without giving away secrets. How do you resist the growth of mold?
Yeah, that's a good question, and really the answer is that I don't. I am very keen to. I don't want to use anything to preserve the materials beyond anything natural. I have tried on some pieces. I've tested out using beeswax, but I didn't really like the effect. So I don't use anything, and I think that's part of the reason why I use these materials. And yeah, I think that I suppose we're in the field of contemporary jewelry or art jewelry, and it's about challenging the traditions of jewelry. And I feel that by using these materials, that's partly what I'm doing, and that they will have their own lifespan, and it may be shorter than our own. And that's not what we're used to, perhaps, but I think that that's an important part of the work. Yeah, and through wearing and through exposing the materials to the body and the sweat and the warmth that we have, they will decay and age a lot faster than if you just keep them in a sort of museum context where you can gauge the humidity and the light sensoriness. And yeah, I think it's an interesting thing.
So you're really embracing that quality of the material and allowing that, how it might change over time, to be part of the work, part of the piece.
Yeah, I hope so. That's what I'd like to think. Yeah.
An additional question then has popped in saying, okay, does that mean the citrus peels haven't been treated at all? They're just dried?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. That's quite amazing, isn't it? So we have lots of nice comments coming in from, I'm just checking if there are any others that are actually questions. Here we go. From Carolyn Tilley asks, with your new exploration into cutlery, are you creating different utensils beyond the norm?
Oh, I hope so. I think that's what I'm aiming to do with my. I call that first series Ambiguous Implements, because some of them crossed over into referencing other forms of body care, like brushes and combs and things like that. So I hope to kind of, in a way, continue to subvert traditions of cutlery and implements for eating. But I think they're such fascinating things anyway, Carrie, aren't they? That they just they're not really sometimes very useful. They're based around etiquette and through the need to continually develop new cutlery products for sale and consumerism. And
yeah,
you just think, oh, what's the point? I can use my hand. Yeah, so I think that I hope to continue to work with that. But I think what I'm really interested in with this new residency opportunity is to really look at the maker's experience of working within the cutlery industry as well, and sort of the maker's physical processes, repetitive processes that they went through. The most famous one in Sheffield that most people will have heard of for women is the buffer girl role, which are polishers of cutlery, which was a very obviously dirty, quite horrible job probably. But I'm really interested in finding out about their role, and also other female roles, which will include things like file making, file cutting, and other things like that.
Okay, so file making was traditionally female.
I think so. I think anything that that was more generally heavier work
Okay.
Was for the men, the forging and the grinding, whereas the sort of latter stages and any fine detailed work where dexterity was required was generally women.
Thank you. Now, further questions. Tamsin Wilson asks, have you tried working with mushrooms? And referencing that there are people developing new materials and leather type products with those.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I do love eating mushrooms as well. So, you know, maybe it's just because I eat the whole mushroom and I haven't got any waste.
Nothing left.
Nothing left. No. But yeah, Tamsin's so right. There are so many amazing materials, and yeah, I love the sort of the mycelium materials that are being developed for packaging and used within architecture, and could be insulating. It's a really exciting time for material exploration, for sustainable approaches to materials. And I'm trying to take in as much information about that as I can. Yeah, so I think mushrooms, definitely loving the mushroom.
Okay, so the mushrooms are a possibility. You just have to generate a little bit of waste mushroom first.
Yes, possibly.
To fit with your overall structure.
Yeah.
Joe Hurley has a question asking, are you going to look at more experiential ways like the food event to showcase work?
Yes, in essence, that's what I really would like to do with the sculptural things, is to try to, and I suppose with the residency opportunities, is to try and create more interactive spaces where I can in some way try to communicate making experiences from the past histories, and work through narratives to try and represent them in a sculptural context. And whether that's possible or not, I don't really know yet. I don't know whether I'll get anywhere with it, but yes, I really like, there's something that's a bit frustrating about sometimes the way that things work, where you create work and then you send it out to different exhibitions. You don't always get the chance to go to some of those exhibitions and see the work and hear the feedback, and that can be a bit disconnecting and a bit frustrating as a maker, because it doesn't give you much feedback to then develop further and respond to anything that comes up through that process. So that's why I really like to do these interactive events where possible. But there are so many problems with insurance and health and safety that come into trying to do these things. So yeah, it's a tricky situation, but I'd really like to do more of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful having that sort of live exploration, seeing the work, how people react to it in the moment. Another question then, if you're happy to keep going.
Yeah.
A question from Sean Hindle, who asks that, she says you often create work with other craftspeople and creatives. And it's a question really about the importance of collaboration in your work. And do you have any particular aspirations of people that you would like to work with or collaborate with? Whoa. That you'd want to share with us? You may have some that...
Oh no, well that's a good question. I'd like to think that I wouldn't expect anything other than a great question from Sean, but yeah, I really would like to carry on collaborating. I think it's a really valuable experience, and I've learned an awful lot from the different collaborations that I've done so far. I think it works really well when you have kind of clear specialisms and you're working with someone who can bring, you know, in a practical sense, they can bring expertise that you can't bring yourself. And I think that in some ways, as kind of sole designer maker, you are expected to be a bit of a polymath, and that you should be able to do lots and lots of different things. But that's not really sometimes always the best way to approach something. So I'm really keen to do more collaborations in the future. and also maybe to get more work kind of created by other people, or using sending out to get other processes sort of completed. As part of what's happening to my body, I'm also losing dexterity in my hands. My tendons are shortening, and I think over time I will end up having a problem with my making. So I think that that's something I need to start thinking about now, so that I'm able to continue it if that's what I want to continue with in the future. And I'd also really like to collaborate more with people in science and in cooking. I think sort of experimental gastronomy in general is really, really fascinating. Yeah, I'd love to do something around that, and maybe around healthcare as well. That would be interesting.
Okay. Yeah, the interesting ways in which collaboration can reach out into so many other fields.
Yeah.
So keeping the reaching out going, Jeff Derber has a question. First, saying great work, and asking how much you think about the interactions that the work encourages. Do you design with the display event in mind, or do you enjoy unexpected reactions, I guess?
I think the thing is, I genuinely make work based on my own experience, and I'm really, really keen to see then how other people interact with it, and how their experience might differ from mine, how it might not work. And I suppose that's a case for all of us, isn't it? In that although you're the author of the work, we all know that the author of the work is actually the person viewing it, and also what they take away from it. And I think that I can really try and control it, and try and say this is what the experience should be, and that's what you should feel. But it just really never happens that way. So I think it's best to try not to put too much pressure on myself to really aim for something really specific, but go with my gut feeling, and try to make work based on my bodily experience and how I feel, and that maybe there might be some resonances there. But I think I've normalized a lot of how I am over the years. I just thought, oh, this must be normal. A lot of people must have these problems, and do you realize that they don't? So yeah.
Okay, so there's lots of surprises in those gaps when you offer the work to someone else, and it's interesting to allow people to physically interact with the work, because that's a different experience. Often we see work, we only get to view it, but not to handle it.
Yeah, and I think also because I have such a limited diet, I often think in very narrow terms about what I could eat or drink from something, and other people would have such a broader perspective on it. So I think it's much better that other people interpret it.
Okay. There's a lot of generosity, I think, in that approach to the work, Rachel. One more question. Questions are slowing, so if anyone has any more, this might be your moment. Question from Sarah Cathers about what other materials might you like to use in your compositions other than along with the food waste, and does the juxtaposition of them mean something?
Yeah, I think whether we like it or not, there's always some form of symbolism that comes through in the different forms that we use, or the different surfaces that are created by the materials. It's interesting, that idea of symbolism and design, and I think it's something I really would like to carry on thinking about. I am really interested in the sustainability side of things, and I'd quite like to I'm very interested in working with metal, but I'd quite like to think about with the the materials that are compostable, how I can make them wearable without having the metal frames to support them, just as a trial. That will be something I will try out next, I think. Yeah.
Wonderful. I think we all look forward to seeing what comes next, and particularly I think the work with the Sheffield cutlery people, cutlers is the word, I think. I think will produce some really interesting outcomes.
Wow, hope
so a
well,
final challenging question, I think, here, Rachel.
Okay.
There's so from Lauren asking, do you have a favorite piece that you've created in your career, and why is it your favorite?
Oh my God. God, what? I didn't expect that question. I can't think of anything that's my favorite piece, really.
That's maybe fair enough.
Well, I think there are pieces that definitely mean a great deal to me and mean a lot more to me emotionally than others do. Yeah, so I do have anything that relates to Simon is very precious to me. So that's just how it is. Yeah. And Simon's my partner, and yeah, I think I don't really have from like a favorite form or a favorite piece to wear. I don't really wear my own work very much, so yeah.
It would seem that there are people who have favorites. So
really?
A couple of votes have popped in for Doggy Dodger. So Doggy Dodger has been voted favorite twice over while you've been answering that question. So
oh well, that's good to know. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, there we are. That's arrived.
Thank you.
So Rachel, I think we have come to a wonderful conclusion. It's been fabulous to hear about your approach to your work and the scope and the thoroughness with which, if thoroughness is a word, with which you pull all that research together, and the material research, and that blending of lots of exploration on different levels produces such wonderful outcomes. Oh, there is a question still popping up. Ooh. I missed one.
No worries, no worries.
How do you dry out the fruit peel?
Oh, I'm not telling you that. That's trade secret. Trade secret, guys.
Maybe there's a reason why I didn't see that question before then. Okay, there we are. There have to be some trade secrets, don't there?
Well, I think, yes, I think there are, maybe later on in my career when I give up, I'll let everybody know how I do things. That's fine. But I think, well, for now, I'll just keep that one to myself.
Very fair.
Sorry.
That's fair enough. So, Rachel, I'd just like to thank you so much on behalf of CraftNI and of the Association for Contemporary Jewellery Silversmiths for Northern Ireland for being with us today. We hope that someday you'll be able to come and visit us in person.
I hope so.
Thank you to everyone for joining us, and we will at some point share the recording for anyone who hasn't been able to join us live, and we look forward to seeing you another time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Sharon and CraftNI and ACJSNI. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, sorry. I know, I feel like, can we talk now? Is everybody gone?
Hang on, stop recording. There we go.